Stop. He's not breathing. Everyone thought the millionaire was just tired, only a little girl saw the truth. The lobby of the business center looked exactly the way it always did, expensive, calm, and indifferent. Polished marble floors reflected the soft ceiling lights, leather chairs were arranged in perfect order, and people moved through the space with practiced confidence. Phones rang quietly, assistants whispered schedules, and the air carried the tired tension of money and decisions. In the middle of it all sat Michael Harper, a well-known millionaire whose name opened doors without effort. He rested in a wide leather chair near the glass wall, his posture slightly slouched for the first time in years. His brown hair was neatly styled, his suit flawless, but exhaustion had finally reached him. His blue eyes were closed, his head tilted forward just enough to suggest rest, not weakness. To anyone passing by, he looked like a man catching a rare moment of sleep between meetings, someone who had earned the right to pause. People noticed him, of course. They always did. A few glanced respectfully, some whispered his name, others pretended not to stare. No one stopped. No one questioned anything. Important men were allowed to be tired. Only a small girl standing several meters away felt that something was wrong. Lily held her mother's hand loosely, half listening as her mother checked messages on her phone. The girl was 8 years old, blonde, with clear blue eyes that missed very little. She wore a simple blue dress over a white t-shirt, slightly faded from too many washes, and sneakers that squeaked softly against the floor. She had been watching people while waiting, a habit she never quite explained, when her gaze landed on the man in the chair. At first, she thought nothing of it. Adults slept in strange places all the time. But as seconds passed, a tight feeling formed in her chest. Michael Harper did not move. Not even slightly. His shoulders stayed perfectly still. His chest did not rise. Lily frowned and tilted her head, studying him more carefully. She took a small step forward, then stopped, unsure. The noise of the lobby faded into the background as her focus narrowed. She watched his face, pale and calm, and then his chest again. Nothing. She tugged gently on her mother's hand. "Mom," she whispered. "That man isn't breathing." Her mother barely looked up. "Sweetheart, don't stare. He's just tired," she said distractedly, squeezing Lily's hand and pulling it back toward her. But Lily couldn't look away. The wrongness grew heavier, louder inside her head. She slipped her hand free and took another step closer, her heart beating fast. She had seen people sleep before. This was different. This was too still. She stood directly in front of him now, close enough to see the faint shadow under his eyes, close enough to feel how quiet he was. Panic rose sharply in her throat. "Stop!" Lily suddenly screamed, her voice cutting through the lobby like glass breaking. "He's not breathing." Conversations halted. Phones lowered. Heads turned. For a moment, no one moved. For a heartbeat, the lobby seemed to forget how to function. Lily's shout hung in the air, too sharp and too sudden for people to process immediately. A few heads turned toward her with annoyance, others with mild curiosity, but most faces carried the same expression, disbelief. Important places were not meant for emergencies caused by children's imaginations. Her mother rushed forward, embarrassment flooding her face as she reached for Lily's arm. "Lily, stop it," she whispered urgently. "You can't yell like that. Everyone's looking." But Lily pulled her arm back. Her eyes never left the man in the chair. "I'm not lying," she insisted, her voice shaking but loud enough to be heard. "He's not breathing. Look." A man in an expensive suit nearby let out a short laugh. "Kids these days," he muttered. "Always dramatic." Another woman shook her head. He's probably just exhausted. You can see that kind of thing everywhere. Lily felt her throat tighten. The laughter and dismissive voices pressed against her like a wall, but the fear inside her was stronger. She stepped closer to Michael, close enough now that she could see the stillness of his chest with terrifying clarity. He's not moving, she said again, quieter this time, as if begging someone to hear her. Please. Her mother hesitated, torn between pulling her daughter away and the growing unease in Lily's voice. Sir, she said uncertainly, addressing the man in the chair. Are you, all right? There was no response. The silence stretched uncomfortably. A security guard standing near the entrance frowned and started walking over, more annoyed than alarmed. What seems to be the problem here? He asked. The problem, Lily said quickly, pointing, is that he's not breathing. The guard crouched slightly, studying Michael's face. He waved a hand in front of the man's eyes, expecting a reaction. Nothing. His expression changed. He leaned closer, placing 2 fingers near Michael's neck, then quickly checked his chest. The guard's confident posture stiffened, and a pale look spread across his face. Call emergency services, he said sharply into his radio. Now. The words snapped the lobby back to life. Panic rippled through the crowd as people stepped away, suddenly aware that this was no misunderstanding. Someone dropped a phone. Another person backed into a chair. The laughter vanished, replaced by anxious whispers and hurried movements. Michael Harper was gently lowered from the chair to the floor as the guard and a nearby staff member worked together. One of them checked his airway, another began chest compressions with practiced urgency. Lily stood frozen a few steps away, her hands clenched into fists. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. She watched every movement, every push on his chest, every second that passed without a breath. Come on, she whispered, barely aware she was speaking. Please. Her mother knelt beside her, pulling her close, trembling now. You did the right thing, she murmured, though fear cracked her voice. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. People who had dismissed Lily moments earlier now stared at her in shock, some with guilt, others with awe. The small girl in the blue dress, the one they hadn't taken seriously, was the reason anyone was even trying to save the man on the floor. When the paramedics finally burst through the doors, the lobby was unrecognizable. Calm had been replaced by chaos, indifference by fear. And at the center of it all stood Lily, her eyes fixed on the man she had refused to walk past, unaware that her voice had already changed everything. The paramedics moved with controlled urgency, their presence instantly shifting the atmosphere of the lobby. Bright medical bags hit the floor, equipment was unpacked, and clear commands cut through the noise as people were pushed back to make space. Someone guided Lily and her mother a few steps away, but Lily resisted at first, her eyes locked on Michael's still body. Let them work, her mother whispered, her voice breaking as she pulled Lily gently to her side. Lily nodded, though every part of her wanted to stay closer, to make sure they didn't stop, to make sure he didn't disappear into the silence she had noticed first. Her hands were trembling now, the adrenaline finally catching up with her small body. The paramedics checked Michael's pulse again, then his breathing, then exchanged a quick look that needed no words. One of them began compressions with renewed force while the other prepared oxygen and a monitor. The machine beeped sharply as it searched for a rhythm that wasn't there. Come on, stay with us, one of the paramedics muttered under his breath. Time stretched in strange ways. Seconds felt endless, then suddenly too fast. Lily watched the rise and fall of the paramedic's arms, counting without realizing she was doing it, her lips moving silently. Around her, people stood frozen, some covering their mouths, others staring at the floor, unable to look. Someone whispered Michael Harper's name, and that seemed to make everything heavier. This wasn't just a man anymore. This was someone important, someone powerful, someone who was not supposed to be lying motionless on a marble floor. The monitor let out a long, flat sound that made Lily's stomach twist painfully. Her mother tightened her grip on Lily's shoulders. "Don't look," she said softly. But Lily couldn't stop. Then, suddenly, the sound changed. A sharp beep cut through the air, followed by another. The paramedic leaned closer to the monitor, eyes narrowing, then nodded once. "We've got something," he said. "Weak, but it's there." A wave of movement followed. Oxygen was adjusted. Michael's chest lifted slightly under assisted breathing. The stillness Lily had noticed earlier began to break, slowly, cautiously, as if life itself was testing whether it was safe to return. Lily's knees nearly gave out in relief. She sank onto a nearby chair, her body shaking now that the fear had somewhere to go. Her mother knelt in front of her, cupping her face. "You were so brave," she whispered, tears streaming freely now. "So brave." "I was scared," Lily admitted, her voice small. "I thought no one would listen." Her mother pulled her into a tight embrace. "I'm so glad you didn't stop talking." The paramedics lifted Michael onto a stretcher, securing straps and checking vitals with focused efficiency. As they wheeled him toward the exit, one of them glanced back at Lily. "You did good, kid," he said, his voice calm but sincere. "You really did." Lily nodded, unable to speak, her throat tight with emotion she didn't yet know how to name. Outside, the ambulance doors slammed shut, and the siren wailed as it pulled away, leaving behind a lobby that felt strangely hollow. People began to disperse slowly, shaken and subdued, avoiding Lily's gaze now not out of dismissal, but out of something closer to respect. She stood there in her blue dress, small among towering walls and important adults, realizing for the first time that noticing something others ignored could matter more than being loud, rich, or powerful. And as the sound of the sirens faded into the distance, Lily understood that whatever happened next, the moment she spoke up would never leave her. The hospital corridors were quiet in a way that felt heavier than noise. Lily sat on a plastic chair near the emergency room doors, her feet dangling above the floor, swinging slowly without rhythm. Her blue dress was wrinkled now, her white t-shirt smudged from where her mother had held her too tightly. Everything smelled like disinfectant and something sharp that made Lily's nose sting when she breathed too deeply. Her mother sat beside her, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the doors as if she could force them to open by sheer will. Neither of them spoke. Words felt dangerous, as if saying the wrong thing might undo whatever fragile progress was happening on the other side of those walls. Lily replayed the moment again and again in her head. The stillness. The way his chest hadn't moved. The way everyone had looked past him until she screamed. Her hands curled into fists in her lap. She wondered what would have happened if she had stayed quiet like she was usually told to do, if she had listened to the part of herself that always warned her not to cause trouble. After what felt like hours but was probably less than 30 minutes, a doctor stepped into the waiting area. He looked tired, his mask pulled down around his neck, his eyes serious but not cold. Lily felt her mother tense instantly. "Family of Michael Harper?" the doctor asked. Her mother hesitated, then stood. We were with him when it happened," she said carefully. The doctor nodded, studying Lily for a brief moment longer than necessary. "He's alive," he said. "He suffered sudden respiratory arrest caused by an undiagnosed heart condition. If intervention had been delayed even slightly, the outcome would have been very different." Lily felt something inside her loosen, a tight knot she hadn't realized she was holding. She let out a shaky breath and pressed her hands against her knees to stop them from trembling. "Can we see him?" her mother asked. Not yet, the doctor replied. But he's stable. Anne. He paused, looking directly at Lily now. You're the one who noticed first, aren't you? Lily nodded slowly. You did exactly what you should have done, he said gently. You saved his life. The words landed softly but firmly, settling into Lily's chest with a weight that was almost too much to hold. She wasn't sure how to respond, so she simply nodded again, her eyes burning. Later, a man in a dark suit approached them. He introduced himself quietly as part of Michael Harper's security team and explained that everything they needed would be taken care of, transportation home, follow-up, anything at all. Lily barely listened. Her thoughts were still with the man behind the emergency room doors. That night, at home, Lily couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the familiar sounds of the apartment building, footsteps above, a television murmuring somewhere, a car passing outside. Her heart raced every time she closed her eyes. Each time she did, she saw his face, still and pale, and then the moment the monitor beeped again. Her mother sat on the edge of the bed and brushed Lily's hair back gently. You don't have to be strong now, she said softly. You can rest. I was scared, Lily whispered. What if I was wrong? Her mother shook her head. You trusted yourself, she said. That matters. The next morning, news spread quickly. Lily overheard neighbors talking in hushed voices about the businessman who nearly died in a lobby downtown. No one knew her name. No one knew it had been a little girl who had stopped and noticed. And somehow, Lily was glad for that. But deep down, she felt a quiet change she couldn't explain. A shift that told her something important had already happened. She had learned that listening to that small, uneasy feeling inside her wasn't a mistake. It was a responsibility. The days that followed moved slowly, as if time itself needed to recover from what had happened. Lily returned to school, but nothing felt the same. Classrooms were louder than she remembered, or maybe she was just listening differently now. The scrape of chairs, the hum of fluorescent lights, the sound of pencils tapping against desks all felt sharper, closer. Her teachers spoke kindly to her, though none of them mentioned the incident directly. They didn't know. Or maybe they did and chose silence. Either way, Lily didn't tell anyone. At recess, she sat on the steps near the playground, watching other children run and shout. Normally she would have joined them, but now her body felt tired in a way she didn't know how to explain. Not sick, not hurt, just heavy. A classmate asked her if she was okay, and Lily nodded automatically, the answer practiced and safe. At home, her mother tried to keep life ordinary. Dinner was cooked, homework was checked, laundry folded. But Lily noticed the small changes. Her mother hugged her more often. She checked on her at night, standing in the doorway a moment longer before turning off the light. Sometimes Lily caught her mother watching her with an expression that mixed pride and fear, as if she was seeing her daughter clearly for the first time and realizing how fragile that clarity could be. 2 days later, the phone rang in the evening. Lily's mother answered, listened in silence, then slowly sat down at the kitchen table. When she hung up, her hands were shaking. That was the hospital, she said quietly. The man. Michael Harper. He's awake. Lily's heart jumped painfully in her chest. Is he okay? Yes, her mother replied. He asked about you. The words felt unreal, like something from a story Lily wasn't sure she belonged in. She stared at the table, tracing a small scratch in the wood with her finger. Does he know my name? She asked. Her mother shook her head. Not yet. That night, Lily dreamed of the lobby again, but this time it was empty. No voices, no phones, no footsteps. Just the chair and the man, and then nothing. She woke up before anything bad could happen, her heart racing, her pillow damp with sweat. The next afternoon, a black car stopped outside their apartment building. Lily froze when she saw it from the window. Big cars like that never came here. Her mother noticed too and instinctively stepped closer, placing a hand on Lily's shoulder. A man in a suit approached their door, polite, careful, and far less intimidating than Lily had imagined. He introduced himself calmly and explained that Michael Harper wished to thank them in person, if they were willing. "We don't want trouble," Lily's mother said immediately. "There will be none," the man assured her. "Only gratitude." They agreed to go to the hospital the following day. That evening, Lily sat on her bed and stared at her blue dress hanging on the back of the chair. It was the same one she had worn that day. She ran her fingers over the fabric, feeling a strange mix of fear and responsibility. She wasn't sure what saving someone meant after the moment had passed. There were no instructions for what came next. She only knew one thing for certain. She hadn't imagined it. She hadn't been wrong. And tomorrow, she would face the proof of that for the first time. The hospital felt different in daylight, less frightening but more real. Sunlight filtered through large windows, reflecting off white walls and polished floors, and the quiet was broken only by distant footsteps and the soft beeping of machines. Lily walked beside her mother, holding her hand tightly as they followed the nurse down the corridor. Each step made Lily's heart beat faster, not with fear exactly, but with something heavier and harder to name. They stopped in front of a private room. The nurse knocked lightly and opened the door. Michael Harper was sitting upright in the bed, thinner than Lily remembered, his brown hair slightly disheveled, his blue eyes alert but tired. Tubes and monitors surrounded him, reminders of how close everything had come to ending. When he saw Lily, his expression changed instantly. Something softened, something honest and unguarded. "That's her," he said quietly, his voice still weak but steady. "I recognize her." Lily froze just inside the doorway. For a moment, she felt very small. This was the man everyone seemed to know, the one people whispered about, the one who filled rooms without trying. And yet now he was looking at her as if she were the important one. "You can come closer," Michael said gently. She did, one careful step at a time. "Thank you," he continued. "I don't remember much from that day, but they told me what you did. They told me you noticed what no one else did." Lily swallowed. "I didn't mean to shout," she said softly. "I just got scared." Michael nodded slowly. "So did I," he admitted. "I just didn't know it yet." Her mother stood quietly behind her, watching the exchange with damp eyes, saying nothing, unwilling to interrupt something that felt fragile and necessary. Michael took a breath, wincing slightly as his chest rose. "The doctor said if you had waited even a little longer, I wouldn't be here. I've spent my life believing that control meant safety. Turns out, attention matters more." Lily looked at the floor, unsure how to respond to words that felt far too big for her. "I want you to know something," Michael said. "You didn't just save my life. You reminded a lot of people that paying attention is not optional." She looked up then, meeting his eyes. "I thought I was wrong," she admitted. "Everyone kept saying he's just tired, leave him alone." "And yet you didn't," Michael said. "That's what matters." He reached for a glass of water on the table beside him, his hand still unsteady. Lily watched closely without realizing it, her eyes following the movement automatically. When he noticed, he smiled faintly. "Old habits already," he said. The visit didn't last long. Michael tired easily, and the nurse gently reminded them it was time for him to rest. As Lily and her mother stood to leave, Michael spoke again. "I'd like to stay in touch," he said carefully. "Not to make a spectacle of this. Just, to make sure you're okay." Lily glanced at her mother, who nodded once. Outside the room, Lily felt lighter and heavier all at once. The fear she had been carrying loosened its grip, replaced by a quiet certainty. She had done the right thing. Not perfectly. Not bravely in the way stories described. But honestly. As they left the hospital, Lily looked back one last time at the building. She didn't know what would change after today, only that something already had. She had trusted her instincts. And for the first time, the world had listened. Life slowly began to find a new rhythm, though it never returned to the careless pace it once had. Lily noticed the change in small, almost invisible ways. Her mornings felt quieter, as if her thoughts had learned to walk more carefully. She paid closer attention to people now, not out of fear, but out of habit sharpened by experience. She noticed how often adults hurried past one another without truly looking, how easily tiredness was mistaken for stillness, how silence could hide danger. At school, the teachers treated her gently, though they still didn't know the full story. One of them asked if everything was all right at home, another reminded her she could always speak up if she needed help. Lily nodded, grateful but unsure how to explain something that felt larger than words. Her classmates sensed the change too. Some approached her with curiosity, others with a new kind of respect, and a few simply watched her quietly, as if trying to understand what she now carried inside her. Her mother changed the most. The constant tension Lily had grown up with, the careful way her mother moved through the world, began to soften. She still worried, still worked hard, but she no longer dismissed Lily's concerns so quickly. When Lily said something felt wrong, her mother listened. When Lily asked questions, she answered instead of deflecting. It was as if the moment in the lobby had broken a long-standing rule between them, the rule that said children should stay quiet and adults always knew better. Michael Harper kept his promise to stay in touch, though he did it quietly, without intrusion. Sometimes a message came through his assistant, checking in, offering help without expectation. Sometimes a handwritten note arrived, simple and thoughtful, thanking Lily again for noticing. There were no cameras, no interviews, no dramatic gestures. Just presence. One afternoon, Lily received a small package in the mail. Inside was a book about the human body, filled with illustrations and notes in the margins. On the first page, a message was written in careful handwriting, for someone who pays attention. Lily ran her fingers over the words again and again, feeling something warm settle in her chest. She began carrying the book with her everywhere, reading it slowly, asking questions, imagining a future that suddenly felt possible. Not because someone had told her she was special, but because she had learned that being observant, being careful, being willing to speak could matter. One evening, as Lily and her mother washed dishes together, her mother paused and looked at her seriously. "I keep thinking about that day," she said quietly. "About what would have happened if you hadn't spoken." Lily nodded. "I think about it too." Her mother reached out and squeezed her hand. "I won't tell you to stay quiet anymore," she said. "I promise." The words meant more than any reward ever could. As the weeks passed, Michael fully recovered. The news cycle moved on, as it always did, replacing one story with another. But for Lily, the moment didn't fade. It settled into her, becoming part of who she was rather than something she needed to relive. She understood now that saving someone didn't end when the ambulance doors closed. Sometimes it continued in the quiet decisions that followed, in the way people learned to listen, in the courage to trust what you noticed even when no one else did. And Lily knew, with calm certainty, that whatever her future held, she would never ignore that inner voice again. Because it had already proven it could change everything. A year passed, marked not by dramatic milestones but by quiet changes that reshaped Lily's life in steady, meaningful ways. She grew a little taller, a little more confident, her blue dress replaced by others that fit better now, though she still remembered the day she wore it like it had happened yesterday. Time had softened the fear but sharpened the lesson. Michael Harper returned to work slowly, deliberately, choosing a different pace than the one that had nearly killed him. He spoke openly about health, about listening to warning signs, about the cost of ignoring what felt inconvenient. He never mentioned Lily by name in public, but in private he often spoke of her as the person who reminded him how fragile certainty could be. On a quiet afternoon, Lily and her mother were invited to a small event at the business center where everything had begun. The lobby looked brighter now, redesigned with open sightlines and more seating, as if the building itself had learned something. Lily stood near the same spot where she had shouted, her heart beating a little faster as memories stirred. Michael joined them, standing beside Lily rather than in front of her. "This place changed me," he said quietly. "But you changed me more." Lily smiled, shy but steady. "I just didn't want to walk away." He nodded, understanding that simple truth. Later, a small plaque was unveiled near the seating area. It didn't mention names or events, only a single line engraved in metal: "Pay attention. It saves lives." Most people would walk past it without stopping. Some wouldn't. Lily knew she always would. That evening, at home, she opened her notebook one last time. The pages were filled with drawings, questions, thoughts, moments she never wanted to forget. She turned to the final blank page and wrote slowly, carefully. "I noticed. I spoke. And it mattered." She closed the notebook and placed it on her shelf, not as something she needed anymore, but as something that had shaped her. Outside, the city moved forward, loud and busy and unaware, just as it always had. But Lily was no longer just a small girl in a crowd. She was someone who had learned that even the quietest voice, when trusted, could save a life. And that knowledge stayed with her, steady and unshakable, as she stepped into whatever came next.